Meek deals. Base hit to right field. Here comes Richardson. Here's the throw from Markakis. Richardson is safe. Derek Jeter ends his final game with a walk-off single.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen, with the beginning of the 2025-2026 baseball season. The Dog Days of Baseball podcast returns once again for a full season of Major League action. I'm the voice of a generation, Pete Rosado, joined as always by Grizz and our resident Mets fan, Alphonse Stevens. Yes, this will always be a 2-on-1 Yankees versus the Mets. But, you know, this year, I think, Alphonse, you might have a little bit more ammo to fight back with. You know, you guys just got done with a 3-game sweep against the Toronto Blue Jays. Yankees, 2 out of 3 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Tough loss today against the Pirates in extra innings. But I want to start there with the Mets. Your three-game sweep against the Toronto Blue Jays. Thank you. Gave us back the division. Big question. I want to go right into it with you, Alphonse. You got Sean Manaea out with an injury. You've got Frankie Montas out with an injury. And so essentially your number 2 pitcher in terms of name value for the New York Mets, former Yankee closer Klay Holmes. I know he was dominant in spring training, but the season has begun. What are your thoughts so far on the Klay Holmes starter experiment?
It hasn't been successful, in my opinion. This is a guy, again, he was a closer. And depending on who you ask, my personal opinion, he wasn't a very good one. That's why they called him Cardiac Klay, because he would put you guys had cardiac arrest every time he touched the mound in the same situation. And I'm pretty sure I remember I texted you, Pete, when the news broke that he signed with the Mets.
Yes.
I was very upset that he signed with us, thinking he was going to be a bullpen piece. I originally thought he was going to be a setup man, but then when they said starter, I was like, are you kidding?
I mean, listen, Devin Williams did his best Klay Holmes impression today and gave us a bit of cardiac arrest, so we didn't fully lose it.
But to take a guy who is used to throwing just 1 inning every couple of games or so, or a guy who throws max 25 pitches in an outing and you don't see him again for another week, it's a completely different thing when you try to take that same guy and tell him, hey, I need at least 5 or 6 innings. I need 85 to 100 pitches from you. And I need you to do this every 5 days.
Well, it's been successful. We've seen Seth Lugo, former Met.
Seth Lugo, Michael King's done it.
But interestingly enough, Alphonse, and Grizz jump in on this as well, we've seen it a lot done in reverse. We've seen a lot of starters get turned into relievers, and most relievers began as starters. Let's famously go back to the mid-90s. Ramiro Mendoza, John Smoltz, and even Mariano Rivera. All 3 of them originally starters that turned into closers or relief pitchers.
Kerry Wood.
Kerry Wood originally was a starter as well, but he had a long time as a starter. And then you have a lot of guys who, like, for example, Jabba Chamberlain was a starter. And they wanted to turn him into a closer relief guy. Phil Hughes was a starter who eventually they tried to turn into a relief guy as well. But most of these guys start out as starters in the minors. They're throwing 5, 6, 7 innings. They're starters. And then they kind of come up to the majors, and in order to keep their job, they turn them into a reliever, or they have a really dominant pitch like a fastball. In Mariano's case, that cutter, where it's just like, this is so unhittable. If you give him just an inning and that's all you get, he could be lights out. Why don't we see it the other way around? These guys start as starters. Most of them come into the league as starters, get turned into relievers. Shouldn't it be a little easier to turn them right back?
Well, here's my thing. When you look at Klay Holmes, I'm going to compare him to 3 guys who were in similar situations. Seth Lugo, as we mentioned, he wasn't the closer for the Mets, but he was a setup guy. So he was the second to last guy you would see. Michael King wasn't the closer, but again, setup guy, second to last guy you would see. Went to San Diego starting. Jordan Hicks on the Giants was the closer for the Cardinals, goes to San Francisco and becomes a starter, and all 3 of those guys have made successful transitions. but again, I feel like it's easier to go from starter to closer because now you take a guy who's supposed to give you 5 to 6 innings, and now you only need one. You take as opposed to asking a guy who traditionally, historically, is only giving you 20 pitches max unless he gets into trouble. I need 5 or 6 innings. Can you give me 90 pitches like that? I also feel like mentally it's a different process. The preparation is different. When you're a starter, you start the game on a clean slate. When you go out there to take the hill, the opposing team hasn't had a hit yet, hasn't scored a run yet. As opposed to a closer, there are high leverage situations from the jump. Some guys thrive off of that. It's funny, and baseball pundits will always tell you for relievers, some relievers will actually struggle if they get thrown into a game where their team is up by 8 runs and it's garbage time, or their team is down 8 runs and it's garbage time. But certain guys like Edwin Diaz will thrive in a situation where you're only up by a run, you need 3 outs and the game's over and you win. So,
Grizz, let me ask you this. I'm transitioning this over to you with this question here. In the era where we don't essentially have a 5th starter, right, and you basically have a bullpen day game, couldn't a guy like a Klay Holmes kind of transition to still being a quote-unquote starter, but be a guy that maybe allows you to do that bullpen day game, but instead of 1 or 2 innings, he can give you 3 or 4?
Yeah, I think it's a strategy that most managers need to look into. One, it gives your starters and your rotation rest. That's number one. I think that's the biggest thing. I think we all can agree on, especially us being fans of a particular team. You know, if your ace, whoever that might be, needs rest and they're pitching the next game, why not bring in a reliever to give your ace another day of rest or another however many days of rest before the next game? As far as Klay Holmes, him making that transition, it is hard. And I agree with you, Alphonse. It's hard to make a transition to where you ask a guy to give you, I'd say at max, let's be realistic, maybe 30 to 40 pitches, you know, and then you're asking him to come in and do double of that. So in maybe 5 innings, 6 innings compared to maybe 1, 2 innings, maybe. So it's a big ask. And I know his contract is 3 years, 38 million. So that's 12.6 over the next 3 years each year. 12.6, maybe 12.5 on that last one. But it's a big ask of somebody to come out of that transition. Even though originally Klay Holmes did start off as a starter. He was a starter, became a reliever, now he's a starter again. Even to make that transition back to being a starter, it's still hard to come in and pitch those type of innings. And then to be constantly looked at now as far as the Mets goes, you could argue that Klay Holmes is your number 2 in the pen. So now to bring in a guy who is used to being a reliever, just not even a year, I'd say maybe 8-9 months ago, you were pitching in the World Series. Now you're a starter for the crosstown rivals. You're dependent on. You're going up against these top teams, and now not only you go from one division that was already tough to now, in my opinion, a more tougher division in the NL East, where now more pressure is relied on you to be not really a shutdown pitcher, but at least to get us over that hump of you got to come in and give us at least 5 innings. If anything, 3-4 strikeouts, you got to cover the bag. You got to do all of these things and make sure that you're not giving up runs. And that's a big ask of somebody who is transitioning from a reliever to a starter.
Yep. So far, first 2 starts, 4 2/3 innings in both starts, has not cleared that 5-inning hump as Alphonse mentioned, but hasn't looked bad. I mean, 2 runs, 1 earned on 6 hits against the Miami Marlins. 2 walks and 6 strikeouts. That first start, though, against Houston, a little mixed bag. 3 runs, 2 earned, 5 hits, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. So a little bit better on the pitching against Miami. Miami versus Houston, obviously. But then,
not to cut you off, his pitch count has not been efficient.
Well, that's something we could tell you that as a closer. That was his big problem. But here's a question I have for you. I don't want to wish injury on anybody, but Peterson's been great. McGill has looked really, really good. Minaya, Montas, they're going to come back from injury. So now you have 6 pitchers. Let's just say, hypothetical situation, something happens to Edwin Diaz. Do you call on Klay Holmes to close? Because you have Peterson, McGill, Minaya, Montas, and Senga, assuming all your starters are healthy. If Edwin Diaz goes down, do you pull somebody from that bullpen? Do you have AJ Minter close? Do you have Reed Garrett close, or Ryan Stanek, Jose Budo? Or do you say, hey, Klay Holmes, you've done it before. You have extensive experience as a closer. We need you to close. And let's just say, assuming this is a long season injury, let's say Diaz, God forbid, lost for the rest of the season. You're midway through the season. You are in the playoff hunt already. Do you transition Klay Holmes back to being a closer?
Well, God forbid. Number one, God forbid that just happened. Number two, honestly, no, because AJ Minter was a closer in Atlanta. He had that role until they got Raisel Iglesias. So he has experience closing. Ryan Stanek also has experience closing. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the initial report was that Klay Holmes left the Yankees and went elsewhere because he specifically wanted a shot at being a starter. So for a guy, for an organization to promise a player, yes, we'll have you start. And then to go back on it, regardless of the circumstance, I don't think that would bode over well. In an event where we needed to transition a pitcher into the bullpen, I think they would more than likely put Griffin Canning in the bullpen before they put anybody else in the starting rotation there. And that's only because of the makeup of the rotation and the fact that he had to fight for a spot when everybody was healthy. So,
well, let's go over the crosstown rivals. New York Yankees. I mean, we've had a great first week. We're back in first place, 6-3.
You're welcome.
Listen, thank you.
Yes, best run differential right now in Major League Baseball, plus 31. And listen, I know everybody was so happy. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody was super happy with the way these games looked. I mean, listen, 3-game series against the Brewers, 4-2, 20-9, 12-3. Then we went and lost 2 out of 3 to the Diamondbacks. And then we won 2 out of 3 from the Pirates. We scored 10-9 against the Pirates in our 2 wins. And then we scored 9 runs in the win against the lone win we had against the Diamondbacks at home. We play the Tigers going into a 3-game set now. Everybody's been talking about the Yankees' offensive explosion. Grizz, why was I so focused on the game that we won 20-9 on the fact that we had 5 errors?
I think that's okay. So, because I'm going to be very critical today. I've been very critical all day. I'm going to be critical now. Despite the win, yes, the errors are a huge issue. Huge issue. The Yankees themselves, I can see a flaw already that we're going to have a problem late into the season. And I told this to a good friend of mine, Randy, shouts out to you. So we were talking about the Yankees, and I said that their main problem is going to be that hot corner, that third base. That's going to be their problem going deeper into the season, because we've been playing around with that lineup. As of right now, Cabrera started at third.
Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza have been our primary third baseman, and then you've obviously got Jazz as well.
Well, Jazz has been playing second, and to be honest with you, I like Jazz at second more than I like him at third. Jazz has been covering the bag for us a lot at second, and I think him and Volpe kind of complement each other very well. So there's that. I love that because I know that was like a big issue last year that we talked about with Gleyber Torres playing second base. Gleyber Torres defensively probably had one of his worst seasons last year. This year now we got an upgrade in Jazz Chisholm, and with Volpe covering short, which we know he can cover mostly almost up to second base as well. It's looking good for us, at least on that end. We got a veteran at first base in Paul Goldschmidt, which you predicted as well that they should go out and get, and lo and behold, during the winter, we got him.
Looking good so far, hitting 324.
Mm-hmm.
Great game out of the leadoff spot for him. First time.
That's another thing that's been working for us as well. And I know a lot of people give Boone a lot of flack, but this year probably is his best year playing around with this lineup, at least in the front half of the lineup. The front half, you have top four is Goldschmidt. I want to say who's leading off, because I think it's Bellinger.
They had Rice leading off at one point. Yeah, they've had Bellinger back and Judge, and then Jazz.
And Jazz fourth. That's perfect. To me, I think that is perfect. Now, I don't know the status of Giancarlo Stanton. I know, the inflammation in both his elbows, when he's predicted to come back. But when he does come back, if you can slip Giancarlo into maybe that fourth spot and put Jazz down at fifth, we probably have one of the best hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lineups. And I personally would love to see it. Now, I know tinkering it with Ben Rice leading off, Anthony Volpe leading off isn't bad. I know he led off a couple of games. I think the series during one game during the Diamondbacks he was batting.
Yes.
Yeah, he led off one of those games during the Diamondbacks. But the one thing that I see that we're going to have a problem with is that third base. And then another thing that we're going to have a problem with is the same problem we had last year. When we're hitting, we're hitting. When we're not, we're not. And that proved today as well with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, I think our big issue is going to be pitching.
That's top three.
Our pitching staff, not looking very good. Carlos Rodon, 3.97 ERA, 5 runs on 7 hits and 2 starts, 12 strikeouts. So he's looked good, but, not great. Max Fried has looked absolutely incredible. He's given up a lot of hits, 13 hits and 10 1/3 innings, but has only given up 3 runs. He's pitching to a 2.61 ERA. But then you got Will Warren, who looked good in his first start, not too great in his second start. He's pitching to a 6 ERA. Big mouth Marcus Stroman pitching to a 7.27 ERA. And Carlos Carrasco, who stepped in because of the injury to Clark Schmidt, is at a 7.36. And we don't know how long Schmidt's going to be out. Cole's gone. That's done and over with. That's not happening.
Luis Gil probably not coming back till maybe mid-June, July.
Right. So we need for Marcus Stroman to be a good Marcus Stroman, the Marcus Stroman he was in the first half of his time with the Mets.
You need Marcus Stroman. You need Marcus Stroman to basically said what he said during spring training. I'm a starter. So if you're a starter, go out there and prove it. Because, listen, your start against Pittsburgh was shaky.
And that's being nice.
That's being nice. That's being nice. But that's definitely if that was, to me, that's our top 3 problem, our top 3 issues. That third base corner, the hot corner, our pitching, and our hitting. Our hitting is when it's on, it's on. When it's off, it's off. And since we're on the topic of the Yankees, Aaron Judge, my king, my savior. Wow. The man absolutely, I don't know if this is a revenge tour. I don't know if this is, congratulations to him. I know he had a baby. I don't know if it was during the summer or during winter meetings, but I know the child's not 1 year old, so congratulations to him and his wife. But I don't know if it's the new baby inspiring him, but through how many games now? The man has 7 home runs already.
6.
6. Yeah, 6 home runs.
He has 6 home runs, 17 RBIs in 9 games.
I think his OPS is like at
1.31.
Yeah, ridiculous. And he's making a strong case for MVP, which we'll get into early predictions soon enough. But he's making a strong case for MVP, and I'd go on record in saying, if it continues, and God forbid, because the injury bug is in the Yankee clubhouse right about now, and God forbid, bearing injury, he can break his own record. He's on track to break his own record. But I mean, it doesn't mean anything with, if the Yankees are not playing up to their full potential. And with all the injuries we have, the injuries to the bullpen, the simple mistakes that we make on defense. So there's a lot that needs to be called for. And I know we also mentioned the Blue Jays getting swept by the Mets, and Vladimir Guerrero up there working with that contract issue going on. We do have Goldschmidt as a 1-year rental, because he is a veteran. We don't know what's going to happen next year. We can table that for another time and kind of predict and tinker and see if Vladimir Guerrero is going to be wearing pinstripes next year. But there's a lot that the Yankees need to do. I don't know what needs to happen. I don't know if we need to go out there and find us somebody, or maybe we could take your idea. We could take somebody who is from a reliever standpoint that could come in and give us maybe 3 or 4 shutdown innings. It just to get us through the hump, because teams like Pittsburgh, who is now 3-8, Pittsburgh, who's 3-8 now, we shouldn't be losing to those type of teams. Granted, it's an NL team where we're not really sweating off of it. The only 2 NL teams that I really would not take a loss to would be, of course, the Mets. Sorry, Alphonse, and the Dodgers. Those are the 2 NL teams I can't rest if we lose a series to. If we lose a series to Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, I'm okay with that. I can live with that. We don't see those guys that often. Those 2 other teams are big teams, of course, with the Juan Soto drama and, of course, losing the World Series to the Dodgers. But this is pretty much the same team that we had last year. Pretty much.
And interestingly enough, and Alphonse, I'll go to you here. I mean, listen, and actually before Trent Grisham, by the way, thank you for what you've been doing. Trent Grisham coming through. The Yankees have been offensively really, really good. But Alphonse, I'm looking at this Yankee schedule. Okay, we've got a 3-game set against Detroit coming up, which ends with Max Fried. You got Rodon, Carrasco, and Fried pitching against Detroit. Carrasco versus Skubal on my birthday this Tuesday, April 8th. But the first big test of the year, in my opinion, comes right after that. This weekend series that the Yankees have at home at Yankee Stadium versus the San Francisco Giants. And it's not the big name. It's Stroman, Warren, and Rodon. So that's their first big test. And then they go to Kansas City, which, could be a test depending on how you see it. Then you got Tampa, Cleveland, Toronto, Baltimore. You don't really get in my opinion, another big test until you get to May when you got San Diego. So, again, so Alphonse, you got Detroit, San Francisco, Kansas City, Tampa, Cleveland, Toronto, Baltimore, Tampa. Is this San Francisco, 3-game set the toughest they're going to experience for a while? And what should they do in this time period to really kind of make sure they're in a good spot?
Well, they also can't overlook the Tigers. But it's interesting that Tiger series, they have pitchers with all high ERAs, and that's the concern. And luckily for the Yankees so far, they've been able to hit their way to wins. if the offense wasn't as potent as it's been, I think some of those wins would have been losses. Especially you look at that Milwaukee game that they won 20-9. Yeah, you scored 20 runs, but you still allowed 9, which is very glaring. Not a team scoring is very rare to see a team score 9 runs in a game and lose. So I think that those last 3 in the rotations, the Stromans, the Carrascos, the Warrens, those are the guys that when they take the hill, if I was a Yankee fan like you two, I'd be nervous every time those guys made a start. I think the Yankees, I don't think Tampa really will test them. Cleveland always plays the Yankees tough, so I think that'll be a test in and of itself. Not necessarily because Cleveland is the better team, but it just so happens that every time Cleveland comes to the Bronx, they always manage to leave the Bronx a series winner. The Giants, I'm not sure how they're going to look playing on the East Coast. That's the first time they'll be on this side of the country in the season, and as we know, travel and jet lag are real things. So it's always interesting when you get a team that comes from a 3-hour time difference here, how travel and schedule will affect them. But if I'm a Yankee fan, I would be concerned because at some point, and this is not just with the Yankees why I'm saying this, but with every team that has a hot offense, at some point you are due for a regression. The bats cannot, and we've seen it through many different seasons, through many different teams. Nobody stays hot forever. So at some point there's going to be a stretch where those bats go cold, and you're going to have to do like what the Mets do and rely on pitching to win a couple of games. So if the rest of that rotation doesn't get out of those mid-7 and higher ERAs, I'd be very concerned in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Yankee schedule all year. It looks like we have an easier schedule just based on what we're seeing in this first 2 weeks of the season. But again, things can change. First big series outside of the San Francisco, Kansas City Tigers 9-game set will not be until, May 16th through the 18th, that first series against the Mets. And then obviously May 30th into June 1st, that series against the Dodgers. Going to be very interesting there. And listen, I could see what Grizz said, that, Aaron Judge trying to probably break his own home run record. I could see him probably even approaching that Barry Bonds single season number. He's hit 60s before, if he's healthy with some good hitters in front of him and behind him, I could see it happening. But when I could really see it happening? I could see it happening with these new Torpedo Bats. The big story going around the first week and a half of the MLB season is the use of the new Torpedo Bat. And Rob Manfred, Major League Baseball commissioner, has come out and said that the Torpedo Bat is, quote, absolutely good for baseball. And he does not see himself doing anything about the Torpedo Bat. He said the bats comply with the rules. The Torpedo Bat, for those of you who don't know, has been in use for a couple of years, right? It actually isn't. This is not like it's the first time it's happening. Giancarlo Stanton used it last year in 2024, and it was actually created by a current Miami Marlins staffer, former Yankees coach Aaron Leanhart, and he developed it. Basically it's the same size bat. Everything's the same, except the mass of the bat. It's skinnier in other places, and it's bigger around the so-called sweet spot of the bat. Gentlemen, what do you think is for you? I feel like and we've been alive for both of it. I feel like the Torpedo Bats are going to become the new corked baseball or PED discussion. What say you about the Torpedo Bats?
Yeah. So let's get this out the way first, because the Torpedo Bats have been in use for many years. They haven't been used by, I'm not going to say they haven't been used by one single team. They've been used by multiple teams, maybe just one or two people using it, though. Just because it's the Yankees, that's why everybody's up in arms about it. Because it's like, oh, the Yankees are hitting X, Y, and Z. Look, Judge has been hitting home runs way before he started using torpedo bats. So is Goldschmidt, so is Bellinger, whoever else on that team. I think out of everybody on that squad, the only person that's really not a big home run hitter is probably Jazz. Probably. Everybody else are big home run hitters. But outside of that, there's nothing wrong with it. If they comply, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. If they comply, clearly the commissioner doesn't have anything wrong with them. And this is actually a good thing for baseball because the one thing, what's the one thing that people always complain about for the casual person that doesn't watch baseball? Their biggest complaint is it's not exciting. There's nothing going on. There's not enough home runs. There's not enough this, not enough that. Now you have something to where the modern athlete today, with the power, the strength, everything, can sit there and swing a bat, and now we can make this game that much more exciting because of physics, basically. Because of now there's a higher chance of me hitting a home run. There's a higher chance of something happening. Let's just say, for all instance, I'll paint a scenario for you. We're looking at, you could pick two random teams, bottom of the ninth. This hitter comes up, who's typically not a home run hitter, hits a home run, walk-off home run. You know, that makes it exciting. That makes the person want to come back. So for me, it's good for the game. It makes the game that much more exciting. And then here's the thing that a lot of people are still missing. No matter what bat you use, you have to have the skill to hit a ball. And you can't teach that. You still have to have the skill to hit a ball. It doesn't matter what bat you pick up. You can pick up a metal bat, a wooden bat, torpedo shape. Doesn't matter. You still have to hit the baseball, and you have to know how to hit the baseball. So the bats are not a way of, because I've seen people reach and say it's a way of, like the Houston Astros with the garbage cans and all this stuff, the sign stealing and all this type of stuff. No, it's not the same. Very far off. It is not the same.
Alphonse, I'm going to go to you. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people haven't spoken about this. Lindor used a version of the torpedo bat last year when he finished second in the NL MVP voting. It looked a little bit different than the one that, they've seen the Yankees use, and that kind of went on fire when the Yankees used it in that game. It had the top was hollowed out, which is very weird. Doesn't have that rounded full top. But Lindor used a version of the torpedo bat himself.
So here's my opinion. While the bats themselves are compliant with MLB rules, and if you look at the MLB rules, this is the problem I have. Yes, the bats are compliant because the weight of the bat itself is not changed. However, to take from the top and the bottom and add to the barrel, that's where I have the problem. So check this out. And I know Grizz said that you still have to be able to hit a ball, yes. But using regular bats in the past, how many times have we seen guys whiff and they missed the ball by maybe 1/8 of an inch? Now you have a barrel that's bigger. So now in that situation where you would have barely missed the ball or you would have foul tipped it into the catcher's mitt, now you're going to make better contact. And with a bigger barrel, that means bigger exit velocity. Bigger exit velocity means the ball is going to travel further. So while, yes, you still need the eye-hand coordination to hit that baseball, it does give an advantage, you have to admit, because the barrel is bigger. The size of the ball is the same. If a guy like, let's say, an Aroldis Chapman could sneak a fastball by somebody and they barely missed it and it was a clean swing and miss, now that bare miss is going to turn into some type of contact. Whether it's an out or results in a hit or whatever is still to be determined. But you added to the sweet spot of the bat, which gives you more of a chance to touch the ball. Not necessarily get a base hit or a home run or a double, but you're going to make contact, which still affects the game, especially when you have runners on base and all these different factors that could come in. So that's my issue with these torpedo bats.
Well, Alphonse, let me go here with you, right? And I'm gonna appeal a little bit to your old man sensibilities here. Wouldn't you say that it's now the job? First off, I'm gonna say this. If you can hit an Aroldis Chapman 102 mile per hour fastball, I don't care if it's with a regular bat or torpedo bat, you deserve to hit it. Okay. Like if you can hit that thing, good. But wouldn't, in my opinion, wouldn't this just force the pitchers to have to be more cerebral, to have to be able to get better at being better pitchers, because listen, Tony Gwynn, for as great as he was, there were still pitchers that gave him fits. Not many of them, but they gave him fits. Barry Bonds, there were guys who could pitch to Barry Bonds. There were guys who could pitch to Mark McGwire. There were guys who could pitch to Sammy Sosa, who they still struck these guys out. All these power hitters. Listen, even in Brady Anderson's greatest season, he still had trouble with some guys. And so the thing is, you think Pedro would have had a problem with somebody with a torpedo bat, or Maddux, or Smoltz, or Glavine, or somebody like that? You think they would have? Would Mo have had a problem facing somebody with a torpedo bat, knowing that I'm going to be able to outpitch you anyway?
See, so that argument is very interesting because you're talking about technique versus instrument. The technique being the way the pitcher pitches versus the instrument used against them, which in this case would be the torpedo bat, which is kind of an unfair argument to make because we're in an era of baseball today where we see strikeouts more often than anything else. Strikeouts have been at an all-time high going back the last 10 years, way more than in the my favorite era of baseball, the 90s.
And I would argue, not to cut you off, it's not because the pitching's been better. I would argue it's because the art of hitting is lost.
Correct, and I agree with you. But and I forgot who said this. There was a pitcher that came out in the media last weekend, and no, a hitter actually, and he said, "Well, if pitchers can create new pitches, then we can have new bats." And I said, "That's stupid. That's stupid because again, you're arguing technique versus the instrument. You can't."
So let me take it out of baseball. Let's take it out of baseball. What happened when new weapons of war are created? What happens when you go from fighting a war with bow and arrows to now somebody's got guns, to when you go from fighting with the old, load 'em, pellet gun to now somebody's got an automatic weapon, or now somebody's got this. As the instruments evolve, the techniques of things have to evolve with it. So as the instruments of war evolve, different strategies evolve, different ways of combating the enemy. That's how chess is played. Somebody creates a new chess move. Now you have to change the strategies that you employ because you have to now be able to combat the new move. So why can't the same be applied to baseball, where it's like, okay, we've got these new bats that give a little bit more mass to the sweet spot of the bat. So okay, well, now this is on our pitchers and on our pitching coaches and on our scouts and our advanced analysts and God forbid our analytics guys to come up with better techniques to face off against the instrument.
I'll answer you like this. I'll answer your question with a question. In the last 20 years of baseball, how many new pitches have you seen created? There's only once you answer, I'll give you the answer to what.
Well, listen, Dice K had the gyro ball.
Mm-hmm.
You got this kid that I've seen on Instagram in college that apparently does a whole 360 spin Fernando Valenzuela style before he throws the ball.
Well, major leagues, how many new pitches have you seen?
I mean, you don't see much. Most of it has already been created. You've got different variations of your splits and your fasts and your curves, different curveballs, different changeups, things like that. I think the most unique pitch that we've seen recently was Daisuke Matsuzaka's gyro ball, and then I forget who it was that apparently had like the ghost pitch.
Senga.
There you go, Senga with the ghost.
And that's been in the last 20 years. We've only seen 2 new pitches because, like you said, when it comes to pitching, what can you throw that has not been thrown before? Baseball has even nerfed pitches in the past, and well, we weren't alive around to see it, but you can't throw palm balls anymore. You can't throw eephus pitches anymore. So it's you know,
can still throw an eephus pitch if you're like, you see the relievers do it all. I mean, the position players do it all the time. But hold on, the knuckleball, you still can't hit the damn thing. It's 2025, and you still got guys who can't hit a knuckleball, but they can hit a 95-mile-per-hour fastball.
But
that
goes into the way the game is played.
Can't hit a knuckleball or a circle change.
Listen, like I said,
Mariano Rivera had one pitch, and everybody knew what it was, and everybody knew where it was going, and you couldn't hit it because there was a certain technique. There was a certain. All three of us have played baseball games on a video game system. Yes, all three of us know what is the one thing that is always prominent in a lot of these baseball games. Whenever you're playing as a pitcher, they always show you the hot and cold areas of a hitter.
Red, blue.
And for us, what do you try to do? You try to always pitch into the blue areas because that's where you know the guy's going to be good. And then if you're like us and you got a little bit of ego on you, you try to throw a pitch in that red area and try to sneak something by him and do something like that. That's the way the game is played. It's a game of chess. So yeah, if you're going to bring, it's just like someone has a different batting stance, right? Different batting stances, a guy who steps in, steps out, why should the bat influence the chess match that is the battle of the pitcher versus the batter? And with all the analytics that are out there now, why is this a problem?
And you have to look at it this way too. Not only is that changing, we also have to remember they're also implementing the whole robo umpires as early as next year. So a lot of what these guys are throwing are going to be called strikes and balls. I mean, I'm pretty sure, Pete, you saw the game today. There was a couple of calls there. You were just like, okay, there's no way that's a strike. There's no way that's a ball. There's been talks of that as well. So the game is evolving. And I say that to say this, to go with what Pete's saying, like Skeens came into spring training throwing a ridiculous cutter. That's damn near impossible to hit. It's just a different variation, but it's still a cutter. So just like Pete's saying, these pitchers are evolving to strategy, and the new crop of pitchers that are going to come in the future are going to be throwing, unheard of numbers, even on off-speed pitches. They're going to be throwing unheard of things. So it's like a hitter can't do anything but adjust. And the bats itself, I understand what you're saying. The barrel of the bat, you're still going to be able to make contact with it. It's still that skill. It's still that one-on-one opponent. It's me versus the pitcher. It's always going to be that. No matter what happens, no matter what you use, no matter what anybody throws, it's always going to be me versus that pitcher. And I have to make contact. And I think with this, you'll be able to make that contact. It doesn't really guarantee you a hit, but it might give you a little bit more chance of contact.
Alphonse, I want to end with you here. There was and I'm sure you've seen it. There was a interview that was done of Eddie Perez by the MLB Network, talking about Greg Maddux. And I don't know if you saw this, but he talked about a situation where Greg Maddux was pitching to Jeff Bagwell. And apparently Jeff, he gave up a home run to Jeff Bagwell on a very specific pitch very early in the season. In order for 3 months later during the playoffs to throw the same pitch or similar pitch to Bagwell, knowing that he would chase the pitch or he would do something and he would be able to get a strikeout when it counted most because he goaded him into something 3 months earlier. Now, I'm not saying everybody is Greg Maddux, but if Greg Maddux could sit there and say, well, I know you like an inside fastball, So if I set up for an inside fastball and I lob one in there now, and now you think, oh, if he throws this in here, I'm going to knock it out every single time. And then I fool you later. Why can't our pitchers nowadays think like that? Why can't our analytics? And this is before the rise of analytics in baseball.
I get what you're saying, and I'll put it like this. And this is what I've been saying to everybody on this subject. 2 seasons ago, MLB made the size of bases bigger, right? And I said to everybody, look at a guy like Ricky Henderson. How many caught stealings would have turned into stolen bases had those bases been as big as they were when he played, right? So now we take these torpedo bats, and imagine if we were able to give them to Griffey and Bonds and McGuire and Sosa in that era where they were jacking home runs left and right with regular bats. So I don't know. I just feel like you take out of the handle and you take out of the top and you increase the mass. Like just me thinking of physics. That's where my mind is trending in this argument. It's just the physics. Because again, the barrel is bigger. Yes, the weight of the bat is the same, but the part that hits the ball is bigger. I just can't picture exit velocity staying the same when you're batting with a torpedo bat. Now, granted, some guys like Max Muncy on the Dodgers tried the torpedo bat and didn't like it. Other guys like Ellie De La Cruz, his first game using the torpedo bat, he hit 2 homers in the same game. So
Nico Horner used it way back in the day. Apparently, Nico Horner, one of the few guys to use it very early on, I believe back in 2021, and he was just like, didn't really like it. He didn't necessarily wasn't comfortable with it. Bellinger said he tried it when he was with the Cubs back in the day, wasn't really a big fan of it.
But like with everything else in life, what works for me won't work for you and vice versa. So of course you're going to get some guys who are like, it's funny because during that Dodgers Braves series, Max Muncy mid-game gave the torpedo bat back in order to get his regular bat. So I'm open to seeing where this goes. I mean, I typically don't like the idea because in a sense it is a modified bat. It's I'll put it to you like this. It's like a guy who has cork in his bat. Does the cork give you an advantage? Yes. But you still have to know how to hit the ball in order for the cork to be effective. You can't give a corked bat to a guy who bats 190 and expect him to bat 300. So
what if I use the longer bat? So what if you're a pitcher who likes to pitch, who likes to paint the corners? I decide, you know what? I'm going to use a longer bat, not a torpedo, but instead of me using my normal bat, that's maybe the barrel is here, I'm going to use a longer bat so that I can, extend my swing a little bit and catch those outside pitches that you like throwing. You like hitting those outside corners. So I'm just going to use a longer bat. It doesn't change the barrel, nothing like that. Just a longer bat. Give me a little bit more reach. Or let's say Grizz is a pitcher who loves to jam you. He's a Mo, loves to throw that inside cutter in on your hands. So I use a shorter bat. And I come inside and I keep my swing tight. I keep it there. So now you're not coming in on the hands. I'm getting that barrel in quicker because it's closer to the inside part of the plate. So now I customize the bat that I use based on the pitcher that you are. Is that illegal?
Still modifying the bat. I'll put it to you like this. They try to nerf the pitcher with the amount of rosin he can have on his hands and this substance and that substance. You can't rub the ball up anymore. Who was it that was on the Astros that they said he made the ball feel like sandpaper? Mike Scott back in the day. Like you can't do any of that anymore. So if you've nerfed every advantage a pitcher could possibly have, why is the batter getting an advantage now? Shouldn't it be on an even playing field? Or am I making sense when I make that argument?
You're making perfect sense, but it all comes back to the common denominator of making the game that much more exciting. That's the only reason why this is happening. They're not happening for any other reason. It's not happening. It's not a money thing because MLB is not getting any money out of it just yet. They're not getting any money out of it. The players are not getting any money out of it. They're getting an endorsement, if anything, because now once you see these torpedo bats are used in the majors, and the kids who are coming up watching baseball, they're going to want to start using torpedo bats, which now in a few years is going to become a popular thing.
And now it's interesting you said that, because imagine Little League and high school and college using aluminum torpedo bats. That would be insane, because you already
that's going to happen eventually.
And aluminum bats drive the ball further. That's why a lot of these guys who go from college or high school and they go to the minor leagues and they fizzle out is because they realize their exit velocity is not the same coming from aluminum to a wood bat. So if they torpedo these aluminum bats at Little League, my God.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, because and you're 100% correct. You're 100% correct as far as you saying it's a modified bat. I mean, look what they did to pitchers, like you said. You can't do certain things anymore. We got the pitch clock now. There's so many other things that are being done to pretty much, I'm not going to say handicap the pitcher, but to give the pitcher like, hey, we got to speed this up. You got to throw a pitch, or you can't have this on your hand. You can't have this. You can't have that. You can't. So for the hitter, it's like, okay, well, we can give you this. But the whole common denominator is making the game that much more exciting.
Yeah.
Because let's be for real here. Let's shoot straight from the hip here. Baseball is not as exciting as football and basketball. Most
I agree.
Baseball fans who love baseball have either played, are heavily interested in baseball. There's no in between. There's no in between.
I agree.
So the sport of baseball is trying to catch up with every other sport, because look at the NBA. The NBA is getting ready to make a whole separate league just for the European guys. The NFL is crossing over into Brazil,
London,
and all these other countries where at one point in time they didn't even like American football. They football is considered soccer to them, which it is essentially, and rugby. That's the only two things they really cared about. Now baseball is trying to catch up. The only time baseball is cared about universally, at least in my opinion, is probably the World Baseball Classic. That's when it's cared about. MLB itself,
and usually you see prolific offense in the World Baseball Classic.
Correct. MLB itself, I mean, besides your regular fans, you're not getting casuals coming to these games unless they live in that city, like, you know, Yankees and Mets or Dodgers or any of those big name cities, San Francisco Giants. You're going to get casuals that come there, but you're not going to get casuals to sit down and say, I'm going to watch at least 5 innings of a baseball game. It's not going to happen. So that's, to me, and this is just my conspiracy, that's why I think they are implementing these torpedo bats, and Munford is just saying, I'm not doing anything about it because it's going to bring more attention to the game. Guys like an Aaron Judge, a Shohei Ohtani, like you said, Cruz had 2 home runs in 1 game. That's what they want. They want these big name guys, or at least these big leaguers, to hit more home runs. They want to make the game more exciting. What can we do to bring people to the park to sit here in inclement in any type of weather? It's 90 degrees outside. It's 45 outside. How can we get these people to come and spend their money and watch these games? And that's what's going to get them to come and watch.
Well, speaking about some exciting things, before we go into our final topic of the night, this was something very interesting that I saw earlier this week. Sent it along in our chat here. We had these 2 baseball drafts, Team 1, Team 2. You had the offensive and the pitching staffs here, players that were eligible from 1969 to the current day. And I got to ask you, Grizz and Alphonse, what team do you got winning a game? And what team are you picking here? Team 1 or Team 2? Grizz, I'll start with you.
Okay, so this is so hard because you have greats on on both. I said team 1, but give me team 2's bullpen. I think it might be team 1 for me.
Okay. So if you're saying team 1, are you starting Mauer or are you going to Gary Carter as your starting catcher?
Ooh. I think I'm gonna go Carter.
Who's your starting first baseman, Miguel Cabrera or Todd Helton?
Oh no, I'm going Miggy.
Altuve or Biggio at second?
Just because I don't like Altuve and he's been making me lose money lately, I'm going Biggio.
You got Mike Schmidt or Wade Boggs at third base. Who's starting?
I'm gonna go Wade at third.
Jeter or Lindor at short?
Oh, no question, Jeter.
Bonds or Manny in left field?
I'm gonna go Bonds.
Griffey or Kenny Lofton as your center fielder?
I'm going Griffey.
Larry Walker or Aaron Judge as your starting right fielder?
Ooh. I'm gonna stick with my king. I'm gonna go Aaron Judge.
And you had Ohtani or Frank Thomas as your starting DH?
Starting DH, I'm gonna go Ohtani. He's having a really good season too, starting out.
Oddly enough, I'd actually say let me get Bonds as my DH, throw Ohtani in the outfield if I could. Who's starting game 1 for you? Clemens, Kershaw, Holiday, Verlander, or Johan Santana?
Give me Clemens.
Game 1, you're going Roger Clemens.
Yeah.
All right. Alphonse, who do you got, team 1 or team 2?
Going team 2, Pete.
All right. Who you got your starting catcher, Ivan Rodriguez or Mike Piazza? And I feel like I know where your answer's going.
My loyalties lie with Mike Piazza. Pudge is great, but I'm going with Piazza as my starting catcher.
You have Pujols or Bagwell as your starting first baseman?
Pujols, hands down, since he's in the 700 home run club.
Alomar or Jeff Kent as your starting second baseman?
I have a weakness in my heart for switch hitters, so give me Roberto Alomar.
A-Rod or Ripken as your shortstop?
Taking Ripken because I know that he won't get hurt.
This is true, though. I will say I think A-Rod was a better shortstop than Ripken.
Gotta go with the durability because 9 inning baseball is a grueling game.
Very true. George Brett or Chipper Jones is your third baseman, and I kind of feel like I know where you're going to go because of your hatred.
As much as he's tormented me in my fandom as a Mets fan, again, Chipper Jones, very versatile, switch hitter, and he can play in left field. If something happens to one of my outfielders, I can put him there. So give me Chipper to start.
Not you putting aside decades of hatred.
I'm trying to win, man. We managed to win the game.
Ricky Henderson or Albert Bell is your starting left fielder?
Give me Ricky, and that's also going to be my leadoff hitter.
Trout or Edmonds is your center fielder?
Mike Trout, hands down.
Interesting, because you said the durability piece. I would have thought you'd picked Edmonds.
Yeah, but Edmonds doesn't have anywhere near the power or the speed of Mike Trout.
Vlad Guerrero Sr. or Tony Gwynn as your right fielder? And oddly, I think this might be the hardest choice.
It is the hardest choice because Vlad Sr. was power. Vlad Sr. is also the best bad ball hitter baseball ever saw. Tony Gwynn also doesn't strike out, but I value power over contact. So give me Vlad Sr. If it's Vlad Sr. from the Angels or Montreal, give me Vlad Sr.
Interesting, because I think right field is the biggest debate for your team, but left field, Bond versus Manny Ramirez, I feel like was the biggest debate for team 1 in left field. David Ortiz or Edgar Martinez is your DH?
This is going to shock you, but give me Edgar.
It doesn't shock me at all, actually. I think I'm more shocked that you took Vlad over Tony because I feel like Tony. I'm a big Tony Gwynn mark. I love Vlad. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a big Tony Gwynn mark. Now, who's starting game 1 for you? I think you have a very, very tough starting rotation. Who's starting game 1? Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Greg Maddux, Max Scherzer, or Kurt Schilling?
To quote this starting pitcher, I gotta tip my hat and call the Yankee my daddy. Going with Pedro. Absolutely going with Pedro, especially because if team 1 is starting Clemens, I need a flamethrower to match the flamethrower. So got to go with Pedro because out of everybody in that group, he has the best velocity out of them all.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you this one question. Is there anybody who you feel did not get consideration in this draft that should have been a name on this list?
You said 1969 to current day?
Correct.
Where's my guy?
Who would you replace on either team 1 or team 2?
Well, since I picked team 2, I would remove Kurt Schilling, and I'm calling my guy Tom Terrific, man.
Yeah, I would have removed Kurt Schilling too. That was the only name in that bullpen that was kind of like, I could deal with that.
I know it's Mets bias, but there's no way Tom Seaver couldn't get drafted from players for 69 to current day. The man had 3 Cy Youngs.
This is true. I mean, listen, Eckersley is on this list as a closer. It's tough because, you know, I'd love to see where like a guy like Trevor Hoffman landed here. You know, I think honestly, I could replace Verlander or Scherzer with a guy like Roy Oswalt.
I'm surprised Johan Santana is on this list.
Yeah, I'm surprised about that one too.
I could see that. But I could see Johan being on as more of a modern pick. But again, I could see, like, I don't understand why a guy like Roy Oswalt isn't on this list. I don't understand why a guy like, I don't understand how Glavin's not on this list. You could make a case to replace Eckersley or Mariano.
You know what's very telling? Johan Santana is on this list, but nobody thought of Nolan Ryan.
This is true. Yeah, you got no Nolan Ryan on this list.
No Nolan Ryan, no Pete Rose.
No Rose. No Clemente.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about that? Speaking of Clemente, did you hear what happened today?
Oh yeah, apparently, but they took away his mural and put an ad up, and then got called out by his son.
Family was furious.
Oh, of course, I would be as well. You know, it's interesting. You see some of the names on this list. You know what's interesting about this, Grizz? We were talking about this in our chat earlier. We'll probably talk about this more on episode number 2. Comments by Jazz Chisholm Jr. about how baseball's a white sport.
Mm-hmm.
But yet you see guys like Manny Ramirez, Barry Bonds.
Can I make a comment real quick on this list?
Griffey. Oh, 1 second. Kenny Lofton, Frank Thomas, Tony Gwynn on this list, Albert Bell, all incredible black players in Major League Baseball. And I would even say you got guys that don't get mentioned enough: Torrey Hunter, Kirby Puckett, Garrett Anderson, the Upton brothers. So, you know, we'll get more into this in episode 2. That'll be something that we talk about. But definitely an interesting choice of words there by Jazz. Alphonse, go ahead.
I think what appalled me on the list for both teams, granted, Ramirez and Bonds are cool, but when you talk about outfielders, how could you overlook Hank Aaron and Willie Mays?
Yeah.
This is true.
We're talking about 69 to – I mean, I get it. That's a large gap, 69 to 2025, but up until Bonds did it, Hank Aaron was the home run king.
And no Reggie Jackson on that list either.
Nope.
You know, very interesting. Let's go into our final topic around the league, some news and notes that we saw in this opening week. Alphonse, I know you had something that you wanted to bring to the table concerning the recent news about Yerrrr and Profar.
Oh yeah, Yerrrr and Profar. It's crazy that Profar gets suspended for PEDs. The Braves season, I feel, is in the toilet already. Only because they were at a disadvantage going into spring training because Ronald Acuna is still recovering from the ACL, which he tore, the same ACL he tore already once before. Their best pitchers on their staff, Spencer Strider, he's on the IL to start. And then Reynaldo Lopez, their number 2, went on the IL on opening day. And then for this to happen, Profar, who they gave Profar a bag, and now he's going to be gone for half the season. And let's just say, hypothetically, the Braves do make the playoffs, right? He cannot play in the postseason because of his suspension. So even if he does come back and lights up the last 80 games of the season, you cannot use him in the most meaningful time of the year, which is the postseason. So I feel like the Braves are. If I'm a Braves fan, I would be very worried. You don't have your ace or your number two. Your star player is hurt, and now the guy who you thought was going to carry you all for a good part of the season is gone. Matt Olson is not the same Matt Olson that he once was. Sean Murphy is started to see your catcher is also starting the year on the IL. So you already have a mounting number of injuries, and you haven't even played 20 games yet, and a suspension of one of your cornerstone players. So it's not looking good for the Braves right now.
Yeah, it's definitely not looking good for them.
And shout out to every pandit who said that the Braves were the second best team in the NL East that had the Mets third. Because I've been watching you, Chris Mad Dog Russo, and I heard what you said.
Oof. So I guess that's also me, because if we're gonna go into the predictions, because I did write them down. Oh goodness gracious! I did have the Atlanta Braves as the NL East champs, but only by this much, because I feel like the Mets are still right there. I feel like the Mets are right there. I feel like we're gonna get what we got last season. But because starting out there hasn't really been too many news since started out, unless you count the injuries and everything happening around the league. Profar being out for half the season, it seems like the Atlanta Braves they need a reset. It's time for a reset. It's time for a facelift. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they thought because they did give Profar quite a bit of money. If there was going to be their cornerstone, their turnaround with Profar, you still got Michael Harris, you still got Ozzy over there. So there's a lot looking up. But now you got all these injuries, injury to Sean Murphy, and all of these things going on. It's not looking too good, and especially in a division where it's going to be another one that's going to be a dogfight with the Phillies and the Mets outside of Miami and the Nationals. Well, I won't even say the Nationals, because the Nationals might even sneak in there, but it's going to be tough to not have your player that you went out and got. And not only that, like you said, Alphonse, if you do happen to get into the playoffs, you're still not going to be able to get him through the playoffs. So now you can make the excuse of that's why you fell short if you happen to sneak in. But I don't see now, with my way early predictions, I don't see Atlanta being the NL East champs. Now I might have to switch gears to maybe the Phillies, or I might have to give it to the Mets. Right now it's just way early predictions, but it is a shame that Atlanta is going through that right
now. But to the other point, Grizz, if you look at statistically, no team that has started 0-7 has seen postseason baseball in the season they started 0-7. So numbers don't lie. So Atlanta, they're gonna have a lot of hard work to do.
That is true. Right now, Atlanta is currently sitting at, I believe, 1-7, 1-8. They're sitting at 1-8. They're 6 games back. So, I agree with you. They got a lot of work to do. They were scheduled to play Miami, but it was postponed due to inclement weather. So.
What's an interesting note before we get off the topic of the Braves? They had asked Brian Snitker during spring training, their manager, because he just turned 70 years old, how much longer he plans to manage. And he gave a very cryptic answer. He said, I'll see how things go this year, and I'll use that to determine if I come back next year. So he probably already had a feeling this year might be tough.
I mean, well, at this point, with everything going on, we know how things go in all sports, especially with coaches. Once a team that has high expectations, once they start, digressing in the wrong, they start going in the wrong direction and regressing, somebody has to get fired.
Well,
Is it gonna be the
granted,
GM? Is it gonna be the
granted,
coach?
the Braves do have a history of letting their managers retire or leave on their own accord because his predecessor Bobby Cox coached until he retired. So, and Snitker's been there ever since. But I don't know. We might see a new manager in Atlanta next season if this train.
And then they just sign onto the team that just added another player that has been coached by Bobby Cox on that team in 2025 now. Well, they just signed somebody, but I'll go here. Biggest thing that I've seen, you talk about the Braves, I've actually liked what they've gotten out of Spencer Schwellenbach, who, looks really, really good so far. 1 walk, 14 strikeouts in 2 games. He's been the best pitcher that they've had so far all year. Was a second round pick in 2021, and he went 8-7 in his rookie season. So we'll see if the Braves letting both Max Fried and Charlie Morton leave will be paid off by Schwellenbach. Like I said, it looked good in 2 games. I'm very, very intrigued. We spoke about this a little earlier about the NL West, because I think everybody has said it's a fait accompli that the Dodgers are going to win the division, go into the playoffs, and possibly repeat as World Series champions. But what we are seeing out of the San Francisco Giants and the San Diego Padres, they are in no way ready to turn or let California be a one-team town.
Yeah.
Both of these teams are looking to really make life difficult for the Dodgers. And again, with Blake Snell being out, Roki Sasaki still trying to find his feet, Kershaw still out for a little while, you're going to have to hope that Yamamoto keeps going where he's going, and that this team is able to hit its way. You're going to have to pull the Yankees. You're going to have to hope that they can hit their way into contention and keep themselves afloat. Granted, you got Ohtani, you've got Mookie Betts, you've got a great team, but pitching wins games. And the Padres bullpen has been almost unhittable so far, and their offense looks like it's finally clicking. Tatis and Machado look like they're finally clicking at the same time for the first time in a long time. And that Giants offense, I think it's also a Giants team that a lot of people aren't giving a lot of credit to. They're not paying attention. They don't see the big names, and so they don't really go in with the highest of expectations. But the San Francisco Giants and the San Diego Padres, I would not be surprised if we see the Dodgers having to fight for first place this season. And I don't know if that team can really take any more injuries. Listen, you can only defer so much money. And they've deferred a lot, so they do need an immediate return. I think that's the big thing, and it's going to be very interesting with what the Padres and the Giants continue to do. And again, that new general manager for the San Francisco Giants, Buster Posey, he's used to that tradition of winning, of solid winning for the San Diego Giants. And while they had names that we knew, Posey, Lincecum, Sandoval, they didn't really have stars. They weren't a team of like megastars. They were a team of solid guys who got the job done. And I think that's what Posey's trying to do.
And the Giants have always been like that gritty, getting out the mud kind of team. They were always a tough team during those runs. I do want to pose you guys a question since we're talking about the NL West and the Dodgers. We know it's not going to be easy for them, but with the team that they have assembled, we know eventually they're going to click. That's just in all sports. Eventually, something's going to strike. Do you see them? How many games do you see them winning this year?
The Dodgers?
Yes.
I'm going to go 109.
Okay. Pete?
That is a tough thing that, when it comes to winning, because it really depends on health. A lot of it really depends on health. They're already, 9-2 in 11 games. I can definitely see them winning 100 games. But that's tough. I mean, last year they won 98, and they looked like one of the most dominant teams in the league.
So I brought that up to say this because Somebody predicted, this is just a prediction that they said, that the Dodgers would break the 2001 Seattle Mariners.
No, get the hell out of here. Not happening. Not happening.
116. I don't know.
I'm not sure that they can pull it off, but I do disagree with what Pete said about their pitching. I'll tell you why I'm confident they have 109. They have a backlog of starting pitching that's crazy. Because yes, while Kershaw hasn't pitched yet and Sasaki has struggled, Tyler Glasnow came back. He looks really good. Dustin May came back after 2 years off. He looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention Blake Snell. I think Blake Snell will snap back into form. You look at their bullpen too. Their bullpen is amazing. They have Blake Trinan as their closer. He's a proven closer. Kirby Yates. Nobody's talking about Kirby Yates, but Kirby Yates has been very, very solid so far this season. And there's another guy. He's a rookie. I believe his name is Caceres. He's in their bullpen too. He has no ERA as of yet. So these guys and Evan Phillips is set to come back. So don't sleep on that Dodgers pitching staff at all.
I'll go this far. I won't say 109. I'll probably go as far as saying, depending on their schedule. Okay, bearing me not looking at their schedule, 110. I'll go one more game up. I'll go 110.
Listen, they won 106 in 2021. And then in 2022, they went up to 111. Okay, 23, they won 100 on the nose. And then last year, the year they won the whole damn thing, they only won 98. So you can get to 111, but then they kind of regress back down to the mean 100. You don't really see a lot of teams win 100 games nowadays. I think that 2022 season was the last time you saw about like 4 or 5 teams win 100 games, including your Mets won 101 games that season.
Wasn't even good enough to win the division with 101 wins.
Right. So it's tough. And I think, again, you also play your division a lot. So it really depends. If the Padres continue to be good, if the
They changed that. They changed the scheduling because now everybody plays everybody, so you get less divisional games.
Well, let's see here. Let's see what their schedule looks like right now. I mean, they lost 2 out of 3 to Philly. And you look at their games, they kind of beat Chicago, then their games. Listen, they only beat Detroit by a run in the 3rd game of the year, and then they needed extras to beat Detroit in the 2nd game. They won the 3rd game pretty good. You know, Atlanta, for being the worst team, that 3rd game, they took them 6-5. So you allowed Atlanta to score 5 runs on you. You know, and then you lost 2 games to Philly in this last 3. You got Washington, and then you go to Chicago, Colorado. So they've got 3 series that are coming up. Chicago might be a little tough, but you got 3 pretty decent series coming up. And then you go to Texas. You know, the first half of their schedule doesn't look too bad. I mean, they don't really touch a really heavy team until May 8th when they go face Arizona for the first time. Then you got the Angels. If the Angels continue to do what they've been doing, they play them in May. But then it's really the end of May. You have a 3-game set against Arizona, a 3-game set against the Mets, a 3-game set against Cleveland, and then a 3-game set against the Yankees. And then to me, June is going to be big for them because you got San Diego, San Francisco, San Diego back to back to back. And then they end the first half with a 3-game set against San Francisco in the middle of July. So it's really going to be, to me, whether or not San Francisco and San Diego are able to continue with what they've been doing. Because if they make life tough for the Dodgers, they're not getting that.
They're not getting 100 wins. I agree.
Fair.
So to end off, before we end off, I'm going to give my way too early MLB predictions, division winners, wild card teams, and awards. So the only awards I'm doing are just Cy Young and MVP. We'll get into Gold Glove and Silver Slugger later on in the season. But starting off with the NL Cy Young, I got either Paul Skeens or Zach Wheeler. both looking incredibly really good right about now. The NL MVP, I have Shohei Ohtani. The NL East champs, like I said, I had Atlanta, but now I'm probably going to change that to the Philadelphia Phillies. NL Central, I got Chicago Cubs. The NL West champs, 1, 2, 3 Dodgers. It's going to be tough. And then the wild card teams, I have the Mets as the first wild card. Second wild card, I have the Diamondbacks. And third wild card, I have the Padres. And eventually the NL champs being the Dodgers. That's just the NL. The AL, Cy Young is either going to be, for me, Tariq Skubal or Garrett. Garrett just signed that big extension with Boston, and he's been looking shut out, lights down for Boston. This is the one year that I'm actually really afraid of Boston. AL MVP, it's going to be a tight race again between two guys. I mean, well, right now, if the season was to end tomorrow, it's going to be Aaron Judge. Right now. But I do have also Bobby Witt Jr.'s name written down as well. He was also in the talk for MVP last year, so we will see what happens. The AL East champs, this is not biased. I do have the New York Yankees, but by a slither. And I mean by a slither. Because Boston is I'm telling you, Boston's going to be right there with us the whole time. AL Central, it's going to be a tough fight, but I got the Kansas City Royals coming out on top. The AL West, a team nobody really talking about, but the Texas Rangers. I got them 8-2 Texas Rangers right about now. And then the first wild card would be Boston Red Sox. Second wild card is either going to be the Detroit Tigers or the Toronto Blue Jays. Or better yet, not because I can't put both of them there. I'll take, and then the third wild card would be the Houston Astros if they eventually turn their season around, with the AL champs eventually being the Texas Rangers, and we'll have the Texas Rangers and the LA Dodgers in the World Series. Bullpen for bullpen, because I like the way that sounds. So right now, those are just the way too early predictions right now. Season just started, 11, 12 games in for some people. We'll update this as we go along. Of course, the season's going to go how the season's going to go. Is there a team that you guys feel should be there that I didn't mention? Do you have somebody else winning a certain division? Do you have somebody else winning Cy Young, MVP?
Biasness aside,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets won the NL East.
I put the Mets as a wild card, not as hate. I put the Mets as a wild card because I know how tough they play the Phillies. I know how tough they play the Braves. But right now, the Braves are at the bottom right now. So right now, it's the Phillies and the Mets, honestly. So if they both can be in a situation where they're both tied for the top record at the end of the season, somebody has to be a wild card team, and that's how I see it playing out. That's how that's how I see it playing out with the Yankees and the Red Sox. I see it playing out as one of those situations where they both have the best record in their division, and somebody has to be a wild card. And who is going to be that wild card?
I'll go here. I think for me, I think the Yankees have what it takes to win the division as long as they stay healthy. I can definitely see the Red Sox winning this division, though. I do have the Tigers winning the Central, though I do have questions about their team after Tariq Skubal. I think it's going to be between, listen, I love seeing the Angels healthy. I love seeing Trout healthy. I think it's going to be between the Texas Rangers and the Angels in the AL West. I'm going to just a little bit of New York bias here. I'm going to take the Mets over the Phillies to win the NL East, because I like it when the Mets are successful. I think it's going to be the Cubs in the Central, and just because I am a hater, I'm going to take the San Francisco Giants to win the division over the LA Dodgers, but the Dodgers will make the playoffs.
Okay.
As for, I'm just going to go Cy Young. So I think MVP is a little too early to call, and I think right now everyone's just going to say it's Judge and Ohtani. For the AL Cy Young, I really, really like. I really like the two pitchers from the Mariners, Logan Gilbert and Brian Wu. And I think I really like Wu a little bit more than Gilbert. For the NL Cy Young, though, I'm gonna go with Shota Imanaga. I think if the Cubs win that division, and Shota Imanaga has the type of year again this year that he had last year or something close to it, I don't know how you deny that man the Cy Young Award, because in my opinion, he should have won it last year.
This is Pete saying that he's very high on Iganama. Very, very high on him. Like he's been singing this man's praises since last year. So
I don't understand how he did not win the Cy Young last year.
Considered, yeah.
You know, and I get it's the whole like, oh, first season, Japanese pitcher, they don't know him, things like that. I get it. But if that man has a second season similar to what he had last season and the Cubs win that division, I don't understand how Imanaga, unless Zach Wheeler has an incredible season, unless, guys like, Schwellenbach and Hunter Green and Yamamoto have these incredible seasons, or Shohei Ohtani for some reason comes back in the second half of the season and is like completely lights out as a pitcher. I don't understand how Imanaga does not get a Cy Young vote or consideration if he has a similar season to last year.
I will buy that. I will buy that. I'm still gonna take Skeens because I like Skeens' game. Still gonna take.
I think Skeens is the presumptive favorite, and when you have a team that like the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are not going to be, I think, a top team, I think it's tough, and the pressure gets to you.
Yeah, that's probably the only thing.
Unless Skeens has an incredible year, like if Skeens goes
he's 20-3, undeniable.
If he goes like 17-3 with a sub-3 ERA and he is head and shoulders the only reason why the Pittsburgh Pirates are good, then yes, I see where Skeens wins it. But if you're telling me Skeens, even if Skeens does that, and you've got Shota Imanaga or you've got Zach Wheeler who's doing ace stuff on a first place team, I don't understand how Skeens gets it over them.
I agree, and I will say this because I do like Economics game, and I will agree with you on that. If Chicago does indeed win this division, get into the playoffs, number one in the Central, I agree with you. He should absolutely win it, unless, like you said, unless Zach Wheeler just has a phenomenal career year. That's the only way that Zach Wheeler walks away with this. Other than that, Iganama, if it's his ERA stays where it's at, or is consistent in that 1 to 2 area, low 2s maybe, yeah. And Cubs win the division, yeah, I agree. Is there anyone that you would consider Alphonse is way too early, or is everything?
I would say, as far as the AL Central goes, don't sleep on the Guardians. I think that they'll be able to turn it around in some time. Like I said, we don't know what Shane Bieber is going to look like when he comes back, but people forget he made 2 starts last season before he got shut down, and he was lights out in those 2 starts. Didn't allow a run in either start. As far as the AL West, this is going to sound crazy. Not saying they're going to win the division, but if the Los Angeles Angels keep it up, I think they have a chance for a wild card. Okay. I like what I've seen from them. I mean, granted, they've played a slow starting Guardians and they've played the White Sox so far, but I like what I've seen. Mike Trout, three consecutive games with a home run. Very promising sign for a guy who's been injury-riddled the last couple of years. Jorge Soler has looked pretty good in their lineup. And, of course, they have the young core with Shanwell, Rengifo, and Neto. So I like what I've seen out of Rafael Soriano. Remember that name. But I think that if the Angels could keep up this winning at a decent pace, they'll be in the wild card. Even if they don't make the wild card, they'll be fighting for the wild card toward the end of the season.
That's fair. And as we're talking about this, reported 49 minutes ago, the Blue Jays are closing in on a Vladdy deal. So there's a lot of optimism that Toronto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will agree to that 14-year, $500 million deal.
I don't know how you turn down $500 million.
I hope they sign him for the simple fact that all weekend this weekend at Citi Field, every time that man stepped to the plate, the Citi Field crowd gave him a standing ovation. And I'm like, guys, we got our first baseman. Like, what are you doing here?
And this is just anybody listening. This is just as we're reporting right now. There's no ink to paper just yet. They're just saying the offer's on the table. Vladimir Guerrero has not taken it yet. We don't know what's going to happen just yet.
Listen, we've seen a lot out of this. It's going to be interesting because you take these big chess pieces off the board. It really does affect the free agent classes for the following years. So you get to see a lot of guys who, get some good money. I mean, listen, next year, there's really no big name catchers out there. JT Realmuto probably be the biggest catcher on the market. First base, obviously, if Vlad gets locked up, if Alonso has his opt out. But other than that, you don't really have a lot of great first basemen on the horizon. Goldschmidt will obviously be a free agent again. Right now, one of the bigger names, Wilmer Flores at second base and Luis Arez being a free agent. That's going to be an interesting one there. You've got Bregman and Muncy, who have an opt-out and a club option. They're available at third base. Shortstop, Trevor Story has an opt-out, so that's really probably your biggest name at shortstop because I don't think anybody's really interested in Bo Bichette. And then in the outfield, Yastrzemski is going to be a free agent, but I can see the Giants trying to lock him up. Kyle Schwarber, Cody Bellinger has an opt-out. Tyler O'Neill, who's really only great on opening day, he will be a free agent at the end of the year. So I don't really see a lot of people unless once you go into the pitching. Dylan Cease is a free agent. Zach Gallen, Framber Valdez, Chris Sale, Seth Lugo, Michael King, Shane Bieber, Shota Imanaga has a club option and a player option for next year. So it's going to be Dakota Senga has an opt-out, Walker Buehler. So there are guys that are going to be out there next year from the starting pitching side of things. Oddly enough, Devin Williams, our closer right now, will be a free agent. Edwin Diaz has an opt-out as well. So pitching seems to be the place. If you take Vlad Guerrero Jr. off the board right now, and assuming Pete Alonso returns to the Mets, it's really a starting pitcher and relief pitching market next year. You don't really have a lot of big name bats.
Yeah.
And that's what we're starting to see. A lot of the bats are getting locked up. But listen, episode 1, we have a long season ahead of us. We are looking to be on every 2 weeks. Now, we will have a little change in schedule for episode number 2 because we would normally record on a Sunday, a little Sunday night baseball for you guys. But because it is WrestleMania weekend in 2 weeks, we will likely be recording the Monday after WrestleMania weekend, so more than likely April 21st, or we might do something the week before the weekend. We'll figure that out. Episode 2 will be a little wonky, but every Sunday night, you'll be able to catch us right here on the Dog Days of Baseball podcast all season long, keeping you up to date with all the great baseball stuff. You got 2 Yankee fans, you got a Mets fan, you got a grumpy Mets fan, grumpy old man down there, grumpy old man over here, and an optimistic, not so grumpy young man over there.
I'm grumpy.
You're a grumpy old man.
I'm just a baseball purist, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's, so you know how they call a picky eater? It's a nice way of saying things. That's what you just said. You're a grumpy old man.
Wow.
But we have a long season ahead of us, gentlemen. I expect to be surprised by a lot this season. We'll see everyone here every 2 weeks for the Dog Days of Baseball podcast. Once again, for Grizz, for Alphonse Stevens, I'm the voice of Generation Pete Rosado. We'll see you in 2 weeks.